Welcome everyone to the 2020 Black Blockchain Summit. Today here with me is Reggie Middleton and Tavonia Evans, and they're going to be speaking about the topic Black Wealth Matters. So hi Reggie and hi Tavonia.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'd like you to take about 2 minutes each to introduce yourselves and what you do and why you think Black Wealth matters.
Okay, ladies first.
Ladies first.
My name is Tavonia Evans, and I'm the founder of Glockcoin and Cowrie, the Cowrie Exchange, and New social network. I'm a data scientist, developer, marketer, mom, and a serial entrepreneur, I guess you can say. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question? you said to introduce yourself. Yeah, so.
Yes, and why does Black Wealth matter?
Why does Black Wealth matter? Because number one, it ties into our values. When you look at, Black people over the generations, I'm going back generations, we have had a lot of history, basically, how do you say? I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm like tongue-tied now. But our history is very rich. And we seem to have forgotten how rich our history is, especially in the current times. There's a lot going on in this country. And I think we've been very, very, very distracted from building ourselves up and building our communities up because of course, we've been distracted on purpose. But I think that once we get our values back on track, we'll begin to see pretty much how much of an impact we've made on the entire earth. I'm big on the fact that we are social leaders. We are social, we inspire the world. We inspire the world through music, through art, through creativity, through innovation, and all of these things. And these are some of the most wealthiest things on earth. But yet we haven't quite connected our creativity to that wealth. But I believe that once we start learning more deeply about how wealth is formed and where money comes from and what value is, we'll start to see how wealthy we really are, even despite what's been said about us right now by some of our opposition in this country. We're really a very, very wealthy people, and that's because we're very creative.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Tavonia. Reggie?
Okay. Reggie Middleton. I can't call myself a serial entrepreneur. I think I had a W-2 for about 9 months coming out of college, and that's about it for the extent of my professional life. I'll be 53 later on this month, just to put that in perspective. I had a .com. I did real estate investment, purchasing real estate, sold financial software, real estate crash approached. 1 + 1 started to equal 98, which even though I'm not that good at math, I figured out it probably didn't. Sold out of real estate, started shorting everybody who did business with me. Predicted the collapse of Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, General Growth Properties, about 85 other calls about banking, real estate, insurance, finance. Shortly after that, the government changed the rules on finance and wealth, basically allowed big companies to cheat. So fundamental analysis didn't work. I caught the Bitcoin bug 2013-ish, about June 2013. And I've been in the blockchain realm space ever since, straddling that and finance, investment, valuation, economics. Founded Boom Bust Blog, which was my advisory business from the beginning of 2007 up, and then Veritasium, which was a blockchain business from about 2013-14 to present. Filed a lot of early patent applications in 2014. We'll see how those end up, and did a lot of what I consider interesting and first, not to go through a whole bunch of those. and ran into exactly how important wealth is. Now, as for why Black wealth matters, I'm going to run one of those controversial semantic memes. All wealth matters. Okay, so I'm not going to go and say Black wealth matters. But you see, the difference is, even though all wealth matters, Blacks, not only in this country, let's say African American, African diaspora, and Africans in the African diaspora worldwide have had the opportunities to wealth and to capital cut off ever since the dawn of the European colonization. It's around roughly 650, 700 years ago. So from European colonization on, although all wealth matters, those of the African diaspora have been from outright cut off to avenues and roads to wealth, to hampered, to disenfranchised, where the opportunities simply are not there as they are for everybody else. So with that being said, and knowing this, okay, Black knowledge and pursuit of wealth matters, particularly to a Black man.
Can I add something to that? I think that we say what Black lives matter, Black wealth matter. When we're talking about matters, we're talking about the association of time now, you know, because usually matters. What matters? What is the matter now? What are we dealing with now? And currently what we're dealing with now is the deficit. You know, where is the deficit? So that's why we're drawing attention, and we're putting a light on, of course, Black people in general, and when it comes to Black lives, or when it comes to Black wealth, because that's where the deficit is. So it's like, we got to look over here and say, okay, this is what we have to deal with now. This is our priority now, I guess you can say. So it's like Black wealth, what is the priority? And the priority is building Black wealth.
All right, I think those are great insights from both of you. So just picking up on your last point, Tavonia, how does blockchain fit into this story or narrative of building Black wealth? What have you seen, given that you're the founder of, you know, two projects that use blockchain heavily? So what would you say is the role of blockchain?
Well, the role of blockchain, as I see it, is disrupting power. You know, that's the whole initial bottom line of Bitcoin itself, was the disruption of power and providing an alternative, a financial alternative to our current system. And I think that we as people, we've been locked in and blocked in because we haven't felt like, number one, we had alternatives, but that we could even create alternatives. So it goes back to the creator phase. And I know me personally, I dealt with the lack of funds that were available to Black women in startups, because I had a startup before as well, Safe to Meet, which had a lot of accolades, but we couldn't raise money. No one would give us money. So we ran into the problem of getting funding. And I think prior to that, me being in the tech world, I never really looked at a ceiling when it came to funds. I felt like, well, I'm in tech, I can make any amount of money that I want to make and take care of my family. As soon as I stepped out of working a job, I found that, wow, I'm not going to be able to pull off these ideas because there's no money available to me to pull up these ideas. And that's when I saw, you know, blockchain as a way of creating a new source of revenue. Like if you look now, what's going on right now and what the real buzz is, the DeFi movement, decentralized finance and lending and all of these things that came out of blockchain that can be built on blockchain. So literally you're building opportunities for people like me who is difficult to get funding for your business or your tech project or your idea, or even just to live on, or to buy your basic needs is difficult to get these things. And here we are in the helm of being able to create that and to create that system. So blockchain really, you know, gave us the power of creation and a solution to a lot of the problems that we currently suffer from today.
Wow, excellent. So Reggie, you have been on the cutting edge of sort of building digital assets products on blockchain, and probably have some, you know, great insights to share from your experience. So as a doer, somebody who's been building wealth or opportunities to create wealth on blockchain, what are some of the challenges and insights that you can share with with the Black blockchain community on how to do so?
Well, first and foremost is a continuation of my introduction. Ever since roughly circa the advent of European colonization, worldwide colonization, you have semi-permanent casts of access to wealth, capital, power, etc. It wasn't just 650, 400 years ago. It still exists today. Just as the sister said, when she went from her job, her W-2, I'm assuming it's W-2, to self-employment, she ran into an issue with access to capital. What first drew me to the blockchain space was the ability to write smart contracts, basically self-executing contracts or agreements that are cast in software, which takes a lot of the bias, the prejudice, the racism, yes, of course there's plenty of racism and anything else, out of the transaction. But that is empirical. I have been taught with a very, very painful lesson that the system has a lot of these biases inherent in it. So despite the fact that you may have a platform that can execute without external biases, so that platform has to live in the real world. Now, of course, I knew that going in, but what I didn't know was how adamant and aggressive those real world forces who currently collect rents, economic rents, will go to prevent you from even getting started. So economic rent is basically money or profit that you bring in over and above what you deserve. A good example of economic rent would be you have a piece of land that's about 3 feet wide and it separates a river, right? Or a water source from a population, okay? The land between the land of the river and the water source combined could be 400 acres. You only own, say, 3 feet of land, but that's the only way to get from the population to that water source. You charge $400 toll each way for everybody to go and get water and come back, okay? You should be charging between nothing and a fraction of a penny. Okay, but you charge $400. You get away with it because you're the only player in town. You're charging economic rent, $399.99 of economic rent. Okay, so what the blockchain economies and technology does is it allows you or anybody else to easily build a way around that 3-foot piece of land you have. Okay, so now they can enable everybody to get to the water and back with ease. Okay, as a matter of fact, you could build economies around your 3-foot monopoly and basically take you out of business. Okay, now there are many ways for that to work, but if you have collected economic rents for centuries, you've amassed so much power, you can simply stomp out everybody who comes up with that idea. That is the biggest impediment right now to blockchain startups. In the US, most entrepreneurial startups that are not founded by those who are part of the club are easily swatted, beat down. They're taken out by regulators, by competitors. Accidents happen, their names are smeared, they're called frauds, etc. And that is a way of slowing down the competition so the oligarchy can continue. It's human nature, that's the way it is, but it slows down the progress of the technology. In the meantime, while that's the modus operandi in the US, throughout parts of Europe and Asia and Africa, okay, projects are moving because they don't have these, except for portions of Western Europe, they don't have these strongly entrenched interests, right, that ensure their survival over the benefit of the entire economy. Okay, and you'll see the US in this upcoming depression, and we're going definitively into a depression, and Western Europe, as they go into this depression, you'll see where these entrenched interests will put themselves before the entire country and the economy. And then as it collapses, you'll see where those who don't have these interests will do better. And those who do have these entrenched interests, who also happen to be currently the largest economies in the world, will all stutter and putter. This is the opportunity, right, for Black wealth to gain. Whenever you have an extreme shift, of wealth, of capital. That's when the true wealth is made. During the Great Depression, there was a lot of poverty. You can Google it, look at pictures. You can see what used to be middle-class people eating out of dog food cans and eating with dogs. At the same time, you had some of the greatest wealth imaginable. The Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, etc. Okay, they were wealthy to begin with, and then they became mega wealthy. The Rockefellers, John D. Rockefeller, created a check that he actually cut a check to save the entire country. He bailed the country out personally, got his fellow, which would have been billionaires back then, in to join in, and the central bank was formed. And the central bank is basically a company, a bank owned by other banks that controls the money in the US. And the US is the largest economy in the world. The Great Depression is the small microcosm of what we're going through now. So what we're going through is going to be worse than the Great Depression. You're going to see significant Black poverty, but you're also going to see the opportunity, not necessarily the wealth, but the opportunity for some of the greatest Black wealth since the days of, wealthy Africa. Okay, now that's an oversimplification, but that's what we're saying. What we need to do is we need to get our ducks in a row. We need to understand how macroeconomics and the actual business of this country works to see what's happening, what we should do and we should not do. I'll give you some examples later on if you wish.
Awesome, awesome. I think you're both talking about the decentralized finance and the opportunities that are there. I work in the blockchain education space. We've been training people on blockchain, on cryptocurrencies for the last 5 years. And one of the biggest challenge that we faced is it's not easy for the average person to understand what's going on. So what should be our next steps to make more people aware about sort of the dangers of the financial crisis you're talking about, Reggie, and the opportunities that lie there? So what can we do to sort of make more people aware other than just education? Are there practical steps that we can take using technology?
I think we need
to. I'm sorry.
One of us, would you like to go first? I'll let the lady go first. Go ahead.
Oh,
yeah.
As a mom, we tend to look at the more practical needs that are kind of, are necessary in our community. And I think part of the problem of why people haven't been getting cryptocurrency and blockchain is that there definitely has been an influx of technical information and confusion in terms. When I approach people about cryptocurrency, particularly my grandmother, because she knows about Blockcoin and she's 96 years old, I talk about money, you know what I mean, from a money standpoint and from a small business standpoint. And that's the approach that we're taking from Blockcoin. We're taking the approach of small business and money, because at the end of the day, like Mr. Middleton said, when there's a collapse, what are we worried about? We're worried about buying the food that we need and keeping, the roof over our head and buying clothes and taking care of our families. So we're at a critical time right now where people are actually seeing this as a risk. So that means that they're listening, right? But everybody is not a finance person. Everybody is not an engineer. They're not a developer, and then they may never be a developer. So you have to have a different approach when you're talking to the general population about cryptocurrency. Definitely dividing it or separating it from blockchain technology and just bringing it in terms of economics, just regular economics. And there's been a lot of people in our country that have come up with, in our communities has come up with economic plans, but they never had the backing. You know what I mean? They didn't, the only thing that was missing was the money, right? So now we have the economic plans and we have the desire, and now we have the money, So, taking that into consideration has been a really, really big task. And the only thing that people have come to me, the only pressing question that people have after all of that said and done, when I'm like, this is money, is, well, how does it build value? That's all they want to know. How does it build value? That's the only thing I can't understand. Okay, we can explain that to you, in very, very simple terms. And it's really tied to your values and what you see as valuable. because a part of that education, when it comes to especially Blacks in America, we have to undergo the education in terms of how valuable we are and how much of a valuable contribution we've made and how much value we leave on the table. We don't even realize how much value we leave on the table, how much social value we live on the table, how many social trends we start, how much you know, spending we do in terms of, that's a form of value, just the sheer amount of spending that you do. But all of this has to be reworked and taught. We have to look into our values and our value system, because once we look into our values, like years ago, when I started Guapcoin, the biggest question I got from people in the industry was like, why would you want to have a Black coin? And that's because I believe Black people are very valuable. You know what I mean? So when you take that value and you can quantify that value, like they've done in the internet, like social media has done, like Facebook has done, and like Instagram and Twitter has done, then we can take that value back for ourselves and actually turn that into something that's investable for our community.
Thank you. Reggie, how do we reinvent ourselves?
Well, education is the key. I'm a father too. I have 3 children. Mine are a little older, 14, 19, and 28. And I go in and I teach everybody. I go into the class, I create mini classes, and I break off from the schools, both public and private schools, and we teach high-end finance, investment. I started teaching cryptocurrency back in 2013. They traded actual value, etc. But when I say education, I adamantly do not mean academic education, because academics has failed the Black population. I hate to say the Black community, because the Black population is much too diverse to be considered a community. But the Black population, the African diaspora population in the developed nations, you know, academics have failed us. You can go and get a PhD in a certain topic and couldn't earn your way out of a wet paper bag. That means that your PhD is not worth what you paid for it. So the key is education, as in learning something that is instantly productive, useful, and valuable. So the first thing to learn that we've been miseducated on is money. What is money? I tell the preteens in 5th and 6th grade, I go and have a class on the definition of money. I ask most of the children what money is. They usually say the most popular answer, they raise their hand, something to spend, something that you use to buy other things with, or something to spend. Absolutely wrong. Okay. A, that's mostly currency, but B, the entire concept is backwards. Okay. I want our youth, our adults, and everybody else to think of money as capital. So my definition of money is a proxy for labor. Your labor is everybody's core value. You can go, you can work, you can make, let's say, $20 an hour. Once you work for a certain amount of hours, you've made enough money that it takes care of your core needs. You can pay your taxes, you can put some savings away, and you still have excess disposable income. That disposable income can go several ways. You could use it to spend on Apple phones and flat screen TVs, or you could use that to invest to make more disposable income. So you could go and hire another worker, and then you could benefit from that worker's labor, right? And doing that and layering, right, by investing. Investing is buying other productive assets. You build wealth. If you go and do what the typical student would say, and not just student, but most adults, to buy things, well then most of what you buy depreciates, and that decreases your wealth. So you have 2 tracks: increase wealth, decrease wealth. When you buy things, chances are you're buying things from people who are purchasing those productive assets, which makes them even wealthier, it makes you even poorer. Okay, once you understand what money is, a proxy for labor, and understand what labor is and the value of labor, like the sister just said, you're on your first step. The next step is to understand the pitfalls of money and the strengths of money. Right now, the United States is on a printing tear. We are printing more money than we've ever done in the history of this country. I think about 40% of the monetary base has been printed since last October. Okay, that's more than the history of the US dollar. So this has never been done before. So when you look at things such as stocks, which have been flying through the roof, certain parts of even real estate, particularly suburban real estate, have been going up. People think, wow, I'm getting wealthier. No, you're not. Stocks are going up because the dollar that stocks are priced in are dropping. So if you buy a widget that costs $1 and the value of that dollar falls to 50 cents, how much should you be charging for that widget to get the same amount? $2. Okay, so people who have that widget say, oh, I've made money. Okay, I made $1 on profit. No, you haven't. You've stayed the same, but the dollar has gone down in value. If you took that money and you put it in something that was hard and didn't fluctuate in value, you'd see that that widget probably dropped in price. If you put it in gold, price your house in gold, your car in gold, etc., you'll see how fast things are dropping. Okay, so certain assets or commodities go up when inflation is on fire. And inflation is on fire now. I don't care what anybody sees. Just take a pen and pencil and look at how much it costs to buy something 3 years ago and how much it costs to buy something now. You can see for yourself. Forget what CNBC says, Wall Street Journal, etc. Don't believe anybody but your own eyes. Okay. So when inflation is on fire, certain assets and commodities go up in price. They rarely go up in price more than the dollar's going down in price. It's just the equilibrium. So your goal is to find something that keeps pace with inflation while you're also investing to create more money. Now, you could go into crypto assets. You can custom create a crypto asset to do all of that plus more. Then you can transact with that crypto asset without using any of the brokers. You can use it. Don't even have to use exchanges. Now, our company has tokenized gold, has tokenized silver, and palladium. Silver is volatile relative to gold, but over the last year, I think silver is up 58%. Over the last month, it's been up like 40% and change. Okay, why? Silver hasn't really went anywhere. The dollar has fell relative to silver. Gold, similarly, less volatile but more stable. Gold is accepted everywhere. Central banks around the world are hoarding gold. Why? Because they all know that the US dollar, which is a reserve currency, is dropping in value. And it's going to drop in value because the Federal Reserve has to keep that oligarchy that I explained earlier in the conversation, has to keep it intact. Okay, so they changed the rules of the game. They've allowed them to, for instance, big banks such as Citibank, JP Morgan, Bank of America, that are supposed to be in the best of health. They have a large mortgage portfolio, and they say that our 30-day delinquencies on these mortgage portfolios have actually went down from this time last year. And it has, if you look at their balance sheet and what they reported. But if you look at the fine print, you'll see that they took a bunch of mortgages, right? 30%, 40% of mortgages that they have, they've taken them and put them in a special group where they give these borrowers forbearances, which means we're going to allow you not to pay, and we're going to take those non-payments and put them back into the loan. So we're going to say you're a current payer, even though you haven't paid us for 1, 2, and 3 months. We're going to say it's current. And the government is allowing that. So now they can report less than 1% of delinquencies, when in reality, for Bank of America, 30%, 37% of their loan portfolio has missed at least 30 days of payments. 37%. Now, to go on from an economic perspective, if you know how a bank works, the way a bank makes money, they raise money. Say they raise $1 billion. They borrow $9 billion more. Now they have $10 billion, and they go and make loans. Okay, and they make loans, and they charge more interest for the loan than they pay from the people that they borrowed their money from. With 10-to-1 leverage, with 10% of losses, equity is gone. With 37% of losses, equity is gone 3.7 times, which means they'd have to make 3.7 times the current money that they have just to break even this time next year. So that bank is technically most likely insolvent, like all the other banks in the US. And this malaise has just gotten started. So those who are seeking wealth need to understand how these economics work. This is not the time to be buying real estate, okay? Because when the banks start getting in trouble, they stop giving loans. When they stop giving loans, people can't get mortgages. That drops the demand for houses, which then drops the price for houses. This is the time to go after things that are very sensitive to inflation, because what the Fed does to cushion these banks who are about to go out of business is to print more dollars. That's monetary inflation, okay? That drives the price of certain commodities and assets up in that weak dollar, and that's going to cause the price of what you hold to go up as well. Not necessarily the value, but the price. Okay, if you look at F has went from, I think, 260 to 270 per F to about 477 over a period of a few months. Expectations of that network thriving, okay, during the upcoming inflation months, years. Same thing with Bitcoin, but F and Bitcoin are not deep enough markets to actually forecast big inflation. Markets that are big enough, gold. I would say the equity markets, but equity markets is so aggressively manipulated and maligned that that doesn't really count, etc. So now the next step is, and this is advanced crypto, is to get in crypto assets where you can custom design your exposure to the stuff you want to be exposed to and wean yourself off of the need of the things that you know are going to collapse. Mortgages and loans, worst business to be in. As a consequence, this is not time to be buying real estate. But the time to buy hard assets is after they collapse significantly. If you live next to a big city, that city's in trouble. This big commercial center is probably fed, a lot of vacancies. These prices are going to go down. Everything else is going to go down. Everybody's going to be bearish on real estate. And then it's time to buy. Okay, so education is the key. Economic cycle. When the economic cycle goes up, right?
Yeah.
You want black wealth to sell. When the economic cycle goes down, you want black wealth to buy. Currently, it's the other way around. Currently, everybody buys.
Let's go ahead, Tavonia.
I wanted to add to that. We're on the verge of, yes, you should buy real estate. Not, in my opinion. I think we're kind of basing our future off our archaic practices that are really about to die a very hard death. I do think you should be buying land because everyone knows who owns the land makes the laws. And that's the problem that we have right now. And the reason why so many laws are being passed that we don't have much input in, because we don't own the land. Landowners are lawmakers. I live in Georgia, which is one of the oldest Confederate, rich wealth. We're holding on to the land states there is. And the reason that they've done as well as they have is because they've held on to the land as long as they possibly could. And holding on to the land, they were responsible for making a lot of the laws and keeping the archaic laws that we have here going. But now we see a turn of events where people are buying land. And mind you, you don't have to get a mortgage to buy land. There are Black people now that have money that can literally go up and buy land, cash out. And I know many of them, and I'm working on that myself. So we need to be taking that money and buying land. I think that's very
land in America.
No, not necessarily. I wouldn't limit you to America, but I would definitely say buy this land is obviously worth a lot of money because they're fighting hard and heavy for it. So this land is worth a lot. So I definitely would say if you are in America, buy land in America. Because in event there are people who are losing their land. There are people who are, I'm sorry about that. There are people who are losing their land. There are people who see the crash coming and they're ditching out fast all around me. I see them all out here. So there's millions and millions and acres of land. You know what I mean? That's becoming more and more available. And those people who buy that land will be the future wealthy people of the next coming age. And that could be us. So I definitely suggest, I'm not saying speculate. I'm not saying going, flipping properties like everybody's doing. It's not, of course, not going to be a great time for that, but buying land, building homes, building multi-family residences where your actual family is going to live. Yes. You know what I mean? This is the time to do that. This is going to be prime time for doing that. You can make a bargain right now on that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we have about 2 minutes, so let's take about a minute each to sort of give some closing remarks. I think this conversation is really amazing, and I wish it could go longer. So we'll start with you, Tavonia.
Well, since we're on the topic of Black wealth, I would say that if you honestly look at the last 2 decades, you will see that we've been accumulating wealth more than we ever had in life. We have more millionaires and billionaires and all of that than we've had. So obviously we're moving towards an upward trend. And we literally have an opportunity to take that upward trend and make it grow exponentially, you know, despite everything that's going on right now. So the key to it is going to be keeping your ear to the community and keeping your ear and forming some type of allegiance on some level is going to be the key to building and making that wealth grow, because it makes no sense. If you're going to die off in the old system, you're holding on to old ways of doing things and holding on to your new money, which is really old money, but not taking it and investing in the future by bringing communities together, investing in small businesses, these types of things that we obviously see are coming back and making a resurgence. Then, you know, all that money you have is going to be nothing, especially when crypto really comes into play. So you better take that money and invest it in something. And I say, you know, now's the time to take a risk on us, you know, on the community.
Amazing. Reggie?
Well, most of the topics take a lot more than a minute to go through. So I'll take the number one investment that I think everybody should take. I'm pretty good at investing, but the reason is because I know how dumb I really am. So instead of thinking I'm smarter than everybody else, I come with that aspect is, let's see what I don't get, okay? And in order for me to see that, I have to learn myself. So if I had to pick anything to invest in, number one will always be myself, okay? I will teach myself the lay of the land independently, not from what everybody else says, but from what everybody else says, and then find out where they're wrong, how they could be wrong, okay? There are a lot of smart people in the world, but just because someone uses big words or says something you don't understand doesn't mean they're smart, doesn't mean they're right. Chances are, if they speak in a language that you don't understand, it's probably not understandable, okay? When I was selling off my real estate in 2006, which is the year before I collapsed in New York, my son at the time, who was 28, at the time, he was saying, "Dad, why is someone paying you $2 million for a building that you bought for $400,000 3 years ago? It looks like they're paying too much. Why is that?" He says, "What is it that I don't get?" And I said, "You get everything. They're paying too much for it." It's really just that simple. So I think a lot of people are intimidated in using their own critical analysis powers. And that is really the only thing that you have. Simply taking as much data from as much disparate sources as possible, okay? Stress test it to see where it's right, stress test to see where it's wrong, come up with your own conclusions. As long as you independently educate yourself, and I don't mean academic education, you have as good a shot as anybody else. Okay, so your best investment is always yourself, number one.
All right, the best investment is always yourself. So I've really learned a lot from you guys, social capital, hard assets. I think we should do a masterclass for both of you separately. But thank you very much for giving us this fireside chat at the 2020 Black Blockchain Summit. Thank you.